evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 13th Fleet After Action Report. I am your host, Chris. It's good to see you tonight. Hope things are going well for you. Uh, I do want to let you guys know that normally we do that kind of back and forth where one week we're talking X-wing, one week we're talking Armada. Last week we did talk Armada, but guess what? We're going to be talking Armada again this week. That does not mean that I've given up on X-Wing. It just means that we had a lot to talk about with Armada here recently and not as much with the X-Wing stuff. I do want to remind you, though, that we will be doing Tuesday Night X-Wing this tomorrow night, so stay tuned for that, and I hope you guys will enjoy that. But as far as today is concerned, I have my friend Reuben on with us, and tonight we are going to talk a lot about the Thunder Forge Gaming Armada Store Championship that we went to on Saturday. A lot of interesting action there. If you didn't get a chance to get there, then there are videos on the YouTube channel showing all the action. Well, not all the action, but rounds 1, 2, and 3. Very specific set of games, though. You get to see me play Damon, you get to see Reuben play Damon, and then you get to see Evan and Rachel. There we go. I can remember names. All of which were good. Well, I should say the second two matches were good matches. Mine was not, but we'll get into that. We want to start a welcome tonight, Reuben. I want to thank you for being on the show. I think your pickup was a little bit weak there, so we didn't catch your words there.
Let me see here. That better?
Yeah, that's better.
Get a little bit closer. Talk a little bit louder. That's fine with me.
So, what do you think was the biggest takeaway that you got out of the event on Saturday?
So I played into Sloan for my round one versus Rachel. I played into Count Dooku from Damon Xantos on the Discords, if you're on any of those. He's I've played him two times before, so we've got a little friendly rivalry going. And now Chris knows what I'm like at tournaments, so I'm like a giant bro at tournaments. It's really funny. And then I played Garrett, a local of ours. He's been on the show a couple of times, practice partner of mine. We're on the same team together. So we had Garrett had been playing GAR 134 with ARC 170s, which are two blue bombers, right? So full squads. The regular thing that's very standard for GAR play, which is two Peltas, one Venator two, and then 4 points of squadrons with Matchstick, Anakin, and then whatever other aces you want to take. And then in preparation for this event, I played around with a few different builds. My I'm still in a weird place with Rebels, but I think I finally found something that I really enjoy flying, and that's important for success at tournament play. So I tried a Liberty build with Agate on it, so that's the MC-80 Star Cruiser with 134 points of squadrons, two flotillas, a CR-90, and its intent is to farm. So in the past, competitively, I've focused mostly on playing Akbar, either with three activations, medium squads, well, five activations, two flotillas, three ships, medium squads, or a full six activation MSU fleet, which I flew for before we actually had the store camping kits. So this was last year. I flew that at what would effectively have been a store level event and got the win there. So that was assault frigate, Akbar, Kaken Asholan, XI7, well, slave turrets, four TRC 90s, two flotillas, Shamrock Tycho. Um,
Lots
so
of
that's kind
small ships.
of lots of ships and a whole lot of sheep. Because it'll do about, it'll do 3 to 5 damage a shot, and it's like 5 shots. So you're just going to get blown up. That's kind of what it does, right? Um,
Well, I mean, I think some of the newer players may not realize that smaller ships, doing a lot of smaller ships can add up, and it's the same when you're looking at the squad game. It's just the sheer volume of fire that you're putting in there, the number of shots. you have a limited number of defense tokens, and so the defender has to really be cautious about how they are using those defense tokens.
Yeah. So that type of fleet, so traditionally in my play, I really fear the 134, right? I'm a 134 player. I love playing squads. I love the technical aspect of the play and really being able to maximize my comparative skill advantage in the game in the time constraint of 2 hours and 15 minutes because I'm so drilled and I've played so much of the game, I can make those meaningful choices quickly. But because of how the meta has developed around combating squads in our particular region, I decided to fly a fleet that was that had done well in at a different tournament. I'm not sure if it was here in the U.S. or if it was an international tournament. That's squadless because the fleet I was flying was 2 assault frigates with Gonbel Iblis and 134 points of squadrons, and it just wasn't doing that. And I'm tired of chipping away at things.
Yeah.
I've played a lot of like, oh, I have one Starhawk. I have to be really like cagey with my engagement, limit my interaction with the opponent, get them in a favorable position, all while I'm scoring points off of my objectives to win the game. And I want to kill stuff.
So let
It's
me
where
let me ask you something, because this is an observation that I had, and I felt like there were a few Sloan players there, and
there
I
were.
feel like the Sloan players were the newer players. Would that be an accurate assessment?
It seems like it, because from my gauge of Rachel, she was pretty new to the game, and you're pretty new to the game,
Yeah.
and we had there was that Architens player. I've seen him at some other tournaments like in the past, but I don't know if he's been playing like that long. Um, it's kind of this thing with Imperial players, because Imperial players will either start with like Mahdi because they really love ISDs, and they're like, okay, this makes sense. I'll fly big brick at thing.
Yeah.
Or they start with like Sloan because they're like, oh yeah, Sloan.
Everybody's
I
talking
want.
about how good Sloan is, and Sloan is good,
They're
but
both really good admirals too.
but
So
on the
it's
other hand, the tricks that Sloan has does not make up the deficiency in skill level.
yeah, like you still have, like you have to understand really what you're doing because the fleet that I flew now and a lot of the other fleets we saw that had success at the event were really designed to just shrug off squadron attack. Because when you layer point defense ion cannons, expert shield techs, evade tokens, Luminara's effect, it just becomes punishing for those one die non bomber fleets,
Yeah.
which very specifically Sloan. And you saw that because Garrett, he played double onager round one, and it was like a close game. And then he played a Sloan player round two and got like an 8 or something off of it.
Yeah.
Not sure how he did, but he got him really good because Luminara just tells Sloan, hey, you don't have an ability, so good luck. And my fleet goes, oh, you're bombing me? Are you sure you're bombing me? Because I don't feel it. That's okay. There's point defense ion cannons, and you've played against me before
Yeah.
when you were playing.
Yeah.
And I just go, oh yeah, sure, bomb me. Okay, that's great. I'm not spending any amount of tokens because why would I give you? Why would I let you just do that to me? So just re-roll that die because point defense ion cannons. But it's, I think it's still important for the game, and I don't think point defense ion cannons is overtuned because if you look at the history of Armada, it's very much been dominated by squadrons
Yeah.
and full squadron builds. So I think it's really important to have a diverse meta that's enjoyable for everyone. So we now like we have to figure out how do we really approach bombing larges, right? How do we get those off of the table quickly? Because this whole packets of one damage stuff that bombers have succeeded with in the past isn't working as often now. So for more specific rundown of my fleet that I flew Saturday, it's the Starhawk Mark One with whale explosives, expert shield techs, point defense ion cannons, let's see here. What else do they have? Because I don't have it run on
If
this.
you go well, if you go to the YouTube channel and call up the video for the second round, I actually in the description have both of your builds there. So you can actually go to YouTube, check that out, and you will see exactly what both Ruben and Damon were running.
All right. So essentially, the Starhawk is pretty hard to kill because it's got two redirects and expert shield techs and whale it, so it can get a token back. It shoots you really hard. It has ordnance experts. It's got rerolls, and with how my fleet supports its action, it gives out confire tokens and engineering tokens whenever it needs them. So it can reroll an extra die on those reds. You get 6 engineering points, move shields around, that kind of thing. And the Providence, when you remember to do auxiliary shield teams, which I don't remember to do that often because I'm bad, it becomes a similar, almost exactly the same shield pattern as the Starhawk instead, but you have one less shield at the front and the rear. You still have 4 on the sides, 5 on the front, 1 on the rear. So this fleet is immensely durable. Now you'll probably, if you, if I make a slight mistake and the opponent applies their damage in a really effective way, I'll typically lose the Starhawk if somebody shoots at it. And that's what happens to any large that doesn't have a defensive retrofit. Like in my first game against Rachel, I cleaned up the rest of her fleet, and then I did so. I'm a try hard, right? So I'll sit here and do actions with my fleet to figure out how to get these ships to move in concert with each other to present a flat front, which is what you need to do if you're flying double larges like this, because
Yeah.
you need to be able to pin the enemy in both of your double arcs and just kill them. Because I'm not there to sit on my station objectives and just get my 120 points and do nothing. I
Right.
can. But the whole point of that is to go, oh, you have to engage me or I will get a 7. If you don't engage with me and fly away and you didn't pick my advanced gunnery, I will get a 7. So you have to come into me, especially in a 3-round event. And we can talk about the difference between like a 4-round event and how you approach playing that, like meta game wise, and how a
Yeah.
3-round works. Because 3-round tournaments are much more risky.
Yeah, and we Garrett and I had discussed that on earlier shows because the point swing can be significant, especially if there's a buy involved, and that really changes the calculus.
Yeah. Because really, you want to get to 21 tournament points, preferably about 24. Because this round, look, basically, like, if you want to guarantee getting a ticket in a 3-round event, you want to get 8s. Your average is an 8. If you
Yeah.
can do that, you'll probably get the ticket. Um,
Well, I unfortunately played a fleet that I thought I was good enough to play, but it was beyond my ability to play. And we'll get into that in just a moment. We've got a first time chatter here that had a question. I am going to my first 3-round tournament this weekend. Any advice for a new player as far as the points go? And I am going to let Ruben answer this because I'm still fairly new myself and I do not have a good answer for you.
as far as the points go, so like tournament points or fleet bid,
I would assume that we are talking tournament points, but we can look at it as far as fleet bid is concerned. I mean, that's a matter of control there. Yes, tournament points.
tournament points. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Sure. So when you're playing on your kitchen table or you're at game night on, for us it's Thursday nights, and you're just playing a pickup game of Armada, and all you really care about is winning or losing, that's casual Armada, right? In tournament Armada, we care about the margin of victory. And the margin of victory is the difference between how many points of the enemy fleet you destroyed and victory points you scored versus the amount of points your opponent destroyed and tokens they scored. So that means that to get a 7 at an event, we need to get higher than 56 64 points, and then it's like 150 or something out of that. And what we're looking to do is we're looking to get enough wins at a high enough margin so that at the end of the tournament, we'll have the most tournament points of all the players that participate. In Armada, it's different than some other war games like Warhammer 40K, where your win record is not the primary determinant factor of who wins the tournament. Now, your win record will obviously infer where your placement in the tournament will be, but if there's no undefeated player, there it comes down to who has higher margin of victory and who has more tournament points. So if there are multiple 2-1 players at an event, so 2 wins and 1 loss, the player with the bigger wins and smaller losses will be the winning player. And also, if there's the potential that you can go 3-0 at an event and get 3 sixes and be at what 18 tournament points, you won't win the event. So for tournament Armada, Chris, got anything?
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, I think a lot of people who are familiar with tournament style play in other war games, like, I'm coming over from Hero Clicks. I've had a lot of experience with that, and I played Magic competitively for a while, and the whole idea is that most people are trying to make the top cut. Okay, where you start playing elimination rounds rather than Swiss rounds, and I don't believe I am familiar with an Armada environment, maybe outside of Worlds, where that happens.
Yes. So in events that have like so a World Open qualifier will have a cut, and the standard tournament format for Star Wars Armada larger events, so like your 32 player plus events, you will have 4 rounds of Swiss on day one, and the top 8 players will advance to play a reset 8-person Swiss bracket day two.
Okay, and so a follow up on that. The same player was asking, should I play more risky to get a larger margin of victory, or is it better to aim for 7 or 8 point victories?
So it's your first tournament, right? Go to have fun, honestly. Like play for sevens, play for eights. If you want to go crazy and play for tens, play for tens. Like you only learn by doing or risking. Right? For me, I would say play for sevens and eights, right? But if it's your first tournament, learning to disengage an Armada is such a uniquely specific skill to this war game that you're not going to learn it until you get blown out by a 10-1 because you went and played aggressive. And then you realize that, oh man, I should have left the turn earlier. And if I leave the turn earlier, I get an 8 and I fly away with the win.
Yeah, I
Instead
don't
of
think a
just
lot of games really think about disengagement at all.
like disengagement is outside of not killing yourself in deployment. Disengagement is like the most important thing you do in a like the shooting and stuff. Anybody kind of like plots it, but like getting out, knowing when to like hit the button and just go, all right, boys, we're getting out of here. Time to leave. Hit the hyperspace drive. Let's get out of here. That's really unique to this game because of how the motion and inertia of the game work.
Now, if anybody has a chance to watch the first round of the tournament, you get to see me play Damon, and that is probably the most embarrassed I've ever been. It was it was pretty rude, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Damon is just really really good, and I did not realize that there was such a thing as a control build in Armada, but Armada is something that does actually have a control build, and I think Dooku had a lot to do with that, which I've got Dooku up there in case anybody wants to see what Dooku does. But the big thing about it is that it's a global effect, okay? And when we talk about global effects, some people may not be familiar with the term, not used to it in terms of Armada, but it is something that affects everything on the board. It is not range specific. It's this is going to happen. And Damon has really fine tuned the way that Dooku works with his fleet, and it prevents you from playing the game that you want to play. I mean, that's pretty much the simple way to put it, right, Reuben?
Exactly. So, to like talk about how his fleet really interacts with limiting the opponent player's decisions. So not only does he raid you with Dooku, he also has slicer tools. And what that really says is that, oh, this one ship, it is not going to do what you want it to be doing.
And when you
Like,
think about it, most fleets, unless you're playing MSU, most fleets are built around one, maybe two ships.
typically, you're looking at about, you want to, most competitive fleets right now fly a large that has like about 170 points on it, because as long as you fly it well, you're not going to lose that badly, right? So it's called point fortressing. But that slicer tools, it's an upgrade we see fairly irregularly in the game, but it can be very punishing for those types of builds, which is why Damon has it in his fleet, layered on top of the types of objectives he's picking, because he's picking objectives that are based on doing a certain command type at a certain place to get points. And he's saying that, oh, well, you're just never going to execute these commands, so I'm just going to get all the points. And that's a very classic like trap for what Dooku is trying to do to your fleet.
And of
In
course,
our
slicer tools are also just brutal when you're running a Sloan fleet, because most of the time the Sloan fleet is built around one ship pushing your squadrons, and those slicer tools are going to tell you, no, you're not doing that. I'm sorry.
Yep, I worry about slicers too for my Lorges because they're all predicated on being able to engineer a bunch, and that's why Leia is so critical to the fleet that I'm flying currently. Success.
But we both got to fly against him. And what was your experience like? Because mine was just, no, you're not doing anything that you want to do, and therefore, well, that was part of it. The other part to it was I flew poorly. I had bad decision making and couldn't decide, do I want to go after the hard cells or do I want to go after one of the bigs? So ultimately, he just chewed me apart because I got myself stuck in between there and couldn't do what I wanted to do. So yeah, I died badly.
Yeah, I saw. It's always a bad sign when the ISD is in the middle of the table and the Patriot Fist is behind it, and you're like, uh-oh, that's not going how somebody planned.
No, that was not the plan.
So for my approach to raiding and Dooku is basically to just shut my brain off and be like, okay, whatever, it'll be fine. Because my fleet, how I order my commands, is I go nav, nav, engineering the rest of the game, and I use Leia to swap the dial. So what Leia does is she's a 3-point officer and she's on one of my flotillas. And she says when you reveal the dial of your ship, you can set a friendly ship's dial to match. That's within distance 5. So that says, oh, well, no, you're not going to slice me. And I can set both of my ships to be able to be reactive in their maneuver based off of how the opponent approaches attacking me. And then the ship that I need to engineer with earlier, I can just set it to an engineering and start that process because my fleet is all about attrition. So I just, churn shields on and we're good. And I just keep shooting you. And eventually I pin something in 2 double arcs and it just gets evaporated because I do so much damage so quickly. But in our game, Damon rated my nav first. So he picked nav, engineering. So Dooku can't pick 3 of the same. Can only pick 3, and he chooses which round of the game the player chooses which round of the game to assign the raid tokens to the opponent's fleet wide, like you said, Chris. So in our game, he picked my contested outpost because my fleet is bidding a whole lot. So I outbid him, which is really important because he's playing a fleet that really prefers to play second because he wants to get you in his trap where you have to deal with his objectives and try to do the commands that he wants you to do so he can tell you no. But my fleet had to bid, which means that he had to play first player into my objectives, which is basically it cuts like half of his combo out. Now I still have to be able to do his raid shenanigans, but I'm not going to be raided while trying to play his game. I'm going to be raided while I'm playing my game. And my game in this game is contested outpost. Now the mistake that I made that cost me the game was that I deployed my ships like this instead of like this. Now, that doesn't seem like a big difference, but when you raid, so when my fleet takes its first action, it goes speed 1, click, outside ship stays at speed 2, and double clicks, and that alignment makes a perfect flat approach. And then I have my contested outpost in front of me. So if I keep doing this, and the ships are about distance 1 from each other, so I can keep doing and making that wheel motion to keep presenting a flat front to my opponent. Because if you're in a flat front like that with two larges, if one of them stays at speed 2, typically what will happen is I'll go from a flat front like this to pop, and then this one will do this, and then I have two supporting double arcs on whatever ship I just caught. Because something has to come for the contested outpost.
Yeah.
So, and it's gonna get shot when it does. So that's the plan there. But what occurred is because he raided my nav on the first turn, I had to do a one click like this, and then like a click click. So I came in at like a wider spacing than how I usually come in.
Right.
And what caused is because of his deployment advantage, he attacked on my flank like a little bit harder than what I was able to adapt my flying to. But what he gave me out of some slight misplays on his part were both of his hard cells. And what I chose to do in my positioning for turn 2, because how I approach the brawl, so we have, you have that first turn of maneuver, and then you have that second turn, like where everybody shoots each other at long range,
Yeah.
and you have those medium to close engagements. What I'm mostly thinking about that turn 2 maneuver is how do I minimize the number of arcs of fire that I take, because I know my ships can typically take 3, but if you start taking 4, that's when you're going to start burning on home. So I made the decision, because his alignment of ships were hard cell, um, munificent, recusant went out on his flank coming through me,
Yeah.
like back behind me, that because of the alignment I had at turn 2, like the end of turn 2, or like beginning turn 1, end of turn 2, I was unlikely to get into a position where I could pin his flagship, the Munificent, in place, and I was unsure whether or not I could kill it because it was walk handle. And he had hard cells supporting where he could just pull shields from them.
Yeah.
So what I chose to do in that case was to try to kill both of his hard cells, because that's what he had given me, and then try to disengage because of a slight misalignment that occurred because of his raids. Now everything else I just kind of in the end, he was able to kill my Starhawk, but I got the majority of the contested outpost points, and I got both of his heart cells, and I flaked 3 of his vultures to death, which is actually it's an important thing to remember if you're playing low squad or squadless, that if you don't kill those fighters, you don't get those points.
Yeah.
So really, like, the margin of a 6 to a 7 is 64 points. Right? So if you can kill 7 point generic or like two 7 point generics, like two vultures, that's 14 points. That's the difference between you getting a 7 or you getting like a 4, right? If you're on the losing or winning end of that.
Yeah,
Because the end for a tournament game, a 6-5 is essentially a tie because there's only 1 point of differential between the two of you. And the person who's winning the events gets 8, and you just kept the person that beat you to 6. So now they're two tournament points behind that person, and two tournament points at that high level of like getting an 8 or a 9. That's a lot to get through.
yeah.
So our game ended with a 23-point MOV to him for the 6-5 in his favor. Now, I played him 2 times before, and he's blasted the crap out of me the last 2 times we played. But that was with stuff I'm less seasoned with than what I was flying Saturday. So for on my end, it shows improvement. So I think we're doing pretty good there.
Speaking of improvement, I can't say that I improved, but on the other hand, I did learn. And that's important. And one thing that I definitely learned was I was not playing the fleet that I should be playing at this stage in my Armada career. It's it was a nice trick. The idea I think is really really great, but I do not have the skill to pull it off because you're talking about getting one shot off with a raider and then getting the dodge out of hell, and you have to have the placement, the opening placement right for that raider. And even with Corvus, that takes some skill. You've got to know where to place it and actually be thinking 2 to 3 turns ahead in order to be able to have that where it needs to be to get that one big shot without getting threatened itself and then get out. And I was unable to do that, and because of that, the raider died pretty quick. And when the raider dies, Sloan dies, and when Sloan dies, the whole thing falls apart. So
Fall off.
yeah, so I played poorly, and I make no excuses for that.
It's
It's one of
I'm
those things where you learn from it, and while I do say that I beat myself in the tournament in both games, I also recognize the skill level of the players that I was playing against, and both of them knew what they were doing and took advantage of my mistakes, and that's they deserved their win. That I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination. Damon, I definitely shouldn't have won against, even if I had played a better game. Um, Rachel, I probably could have made it a bit more competitive, but it is what it is. I made mistakes, and part of my mistake was on deployment against Rachel, where I thought I was going to be forcing an engagement in a certain spot on the map, but by doing so, I actually squeezed myself into a small segment of the map and gave myself less room to maneuver. And that, you want to have options, and I did not actually leave myself options.
okay. So are you still thinking about engagement in Armada based on place on the table?
No, because of the way the obstacles were set up, I really, really thought that by doing things in the manner that I did them, that I was going to be limiting her options and instead limited my own.
Mm, hmm hmm
I misread the map and misread the movement ability of the ships involved, and you know, we were doing superior positions, so I could have placed wherever I wanted to. I saw exactly where her ships were going to be, and I should have. She was pointed in a specific direction, and I wanted to take advantage of the fact that she was coming in at an angle by not being at that angle.
Okay.
And I think
Did you try and like cross the T, or
no,
did you try and
no,
like?
okay. So let's say this is the angle that she was at. I was trying to come in that way.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's hard to do because typically you'll end up needing to go about a click more than you really expected
yeah.
to like make that bend attack.
But it is what it is. You learn how to fly things, and I think I need a less complicated build, something that is less dependent on a gimmick. And let's be honest, that Raider was a gimmick. I
Hmm.
really like the gimmick. I mean, doing the overload pulse with the long range shot is really great when it works, and then finishing it off with fighters with Sloan. Yeah, love the idea, but it's not something that I am built to do. And so we had a nice conversation on the way home from the tournament talking about what it is that I should be playing.
Yeah, we that's typically how it goes for us whenever we're in the car on the drive back. It's just all, it's not even like post game report. It's all about like all the stuff we saw and like downloading that like extra information about what the meta is because now we're seeing the same people show up at the same, show up in the same area of events. So
Yeah,
now you're getting an actual idea of really what our meta actually is. Because before it's been like, well, I know what I play, and I know what Nick and Garrett play, and I know what our other normal Thursday night people play, but most
yeah,
of them aren't going to show up to the event, right?
right.
So who knows when they show up? Because we've had Indianapolis now, and that was mostly a bunch of Rebel smalls, and then a bunch of Anakin and some, me playing Dodger and that kind of stuff. But
Now, I think it's kind of rude that I haven't even gotten to the point where we actually talk about Paul, who won the event, and what he was running. Because I mean, you don't expect to see a victory on the table, or at least I don't.
I didn't get to play him, unfortunately.
Neither did I, and so that's part of the reason why we haven't been talking about him yet. But I did get to sit down and watch his game against Damon,
Mhm.
which was something to see. I They were breaking rules that I thought were set in stone, like never slow down to one, or very rarely. You better be really sure, and you definitely don't want to stop. And both of them went to zero with very important ships. And Damon himself said that it was a mistake to stop when he did, but he was trying to keep the range of engagement where it was at, and he miscalculated and was just outside of the range that he needed to be at. So it was an interesting game. Are the results up anywhere? The West
So
Coast.
you can go to T4, and so T4 is the tournament software that we use for Star Wars Armada. It's T4.tools, and you can look at all the results of all the store championship events and anything else all over the world. So you can find the tournament that we played in, and all of our fleets, and you can go look at events and because there was a World Open qualifier in um, France the weekend before last. We had a bunch of store level championship events all over the U.S. There's some in Texas, and then everywhere else. And you can really get a sense of what the global meta is and how each region is playing Armada in a very different way than what we locally played in, right? So I was looking at some tournament stuff today because I'm on the tournament high, right? So Europe is still very much playing Sloan and very much playing squadrons, but they're playing what's called German Sloan. which is MSU Sloan, not the battle carrier ISD version that you played, and that's
Yeah.
more typical for the States. The States doesn't have a lot of German Sloan in it. Um, we right now the US seems really kind of focused on the double large play or 134 squads. That's like Galactic Republic. Um, our region specifically, because that's what actually matters. Unless you once you get the ticket, then you start worrying about what the world like the global meta is. But before you get that ticket, you need to really like focus on first of all just flying your fleet and being like, okay, I've got so much muscle memory of this fleet. I know what to do in general situations because most fleets will only present you a general situation, and as long as you know what to do in that like set piece, you'll be fine. But from there, you kind of want to be like, okay, well, what really do most people play around me as a player? And I know, and like, who am I likely to have to fight for that ticket? And what can I do in the games against those people to try to get me the edge, right? Especially if you've played those people more than once. Because now I've played Damon twice in events. I've played Garrett a bunch in events. I haven't played another buddy of mine that's on our team, Nick, because he was out of town.
At
So
T4, I think the name of the event would be Thunder Forge Gaming Store Championship, but I may be incorrect. I have never actually looked at T4, so I'm not sure. But
I
we
think
do
it
have
is.
a viewer question on that, so.
Yeah, I think it's Thunderforge Gaming Store Championship. So that's right.
And that is two words, as you see in the graphic that I have just put up there. So hopefully it's there. I know the tournament was actually set up in what was it, West Coast, or what was, say that again,
Best Coast pairings.
Best Coast pairings. So if you go there, you may be able to find the information there as
Oh,
well.
you might have to sign into Best Coast to actually see lists. Best Coast pairings is used more for Warhammer 40K.
Gotcha. I have never been involved in that. Like I said, my background is coming from HeroClix, in which case everything was run through the WizKids info network, so they had their own tournament set up and didn't have to rely on third party stuff. So I'm getting to know how to navigate all of that and find the information. So I am not an expert on that yet, but I know who to ask.
But so Paul's fleet, I took a quick glance over it, and it's interesting because what it looked like to me it was attempting to do was to apply the victory at long range to use a blue upgrade called Heavy Ion Emplacements, which does one shield damage on a blue critical to the target ship arc, and every other adjacent arc to basic to scrape off a bunch of shields at long range, and then apply a Demolisher run, which is a gladiator with the Demolisher
Yeah.
title X with engine techs, so that it can do a whole large burst of damage in two activations and then clean up the rest of that fight because that just gets your attrition to a point where you're going to come out ahead on that engagement and be able to just burst out the opponent and clean up after that because you also have squads involved and that kind of stuff. Now, I don't fly victories. I don't fly against victories. I kind of think victories are going to get blown out of the sky because they only go speed 2. Bake 3 with engine techs, and when you put ECMs on them with Tua and all that, you're basically paying for an ISD that isn't as durable, but can burst more at long range than the ISD can because you can't take disposable capacitors on a large base.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask, what is the advantage of a victory? Because I really have never seen a victory really used effectively until that moment, and I'm still not sure what I was looking at.
So the victory has 75% of the dice of an ISD2, right? So it's three reds, three blues. ISD2 is four reds, four blues. But it can apply its whole pool with an offensive retrofit called disposable capacitors. Once in the game, it can discard to attack with its blue dice at long. So what that means is that with weapon battery techs and heavy ion emplacements, you can and vet gunners with dice manipulation and heavy ion emplacements, you can do a large amount of damage that cripples the opponent's shields at long range, which is is a unique thing that the victory can do. The issue with the victory that keeps it from typically being played unless it's in the hands of like an extremely skilled player who's been playing that type of fleet for a long time. And that's the kind of thing I really want to emphasize is that Paul played that plays that list a lot and like he knows victories and he's put a lot of effort to being the victory guy to get that ship to work at a competitive level. So, and that's the thing about Armada is that if you put in a lot of effort to like really drill down onto a single topic of Armada, you can get very good results for it.
Yeah.
And like it's way more balanced than a lot of other games because it doesn't the meta can really still kind of evolves to an extent. And there's always these people that are like, oh, that's the victory guy. Oh, that's the Radis guy. Oh, that's the Starhawk guy. And they're like doing their own thing and they're doing well with their own thing. And that's a really unique thing that you don't see as often in other war games as you do in Armada.
And this is something that I have talked about in other games and feel like it's really important. Everybody has a play style. You may not have discovered it yet, but everybody does have a play style, and it may take some looking around at different builds to be able to find out what that play style is. Right now in Armada, I am still searching for my play style. I've been lucky enough in X-Wing to find a play style that suits me really well and have been doing fairly well in the events that I've gone to in X-Wing. That just means I need to put some more time into Armada and play around with it and find what I like, what works for me.
Playstyle in Armada is interesting because you've got not only you have the first layer, which is faction, and faction determines a lot of what your tools are in your toolbox to even find what your playstyle. And then you look at your commanders, and that also determines the next even layer lessens your options even more off of like what you can do, how you want to approach the game. Because playing Empire with Gergerod is totally different than playing Empire with Mahdi. Like what we're trying to do with the fleet, how we're engaging the enemy, how the fleet moves on the table, how it approaches engagement, how it can leverage its benefit of its commander. Two totally different things because Mahdi's whole value allows him to like be more impetuous, be more in the middle of the table, to brawl, to dictate position. And Jerry is so flexible in his movement that you can be squirrely and cagey and attack from the edges and put ISDs in weird positions to get double arcs and get out of battle lines and just really obstruct the opponent's plan. So after those two things, then you've got to like fly ships, and flying the ships is really, really hard. they you don't expect them to do stuff. They fly in weird ways, and then you nav dial, and you're like, oh, I could be like way over here, and you didn't even conceive that as an idea before that point. So then you kind of get to be like, okay, I like this ship is how it flies, and I like this commander because of what they give me, and because I like this faction as a whole, and I really like these tools. And then you get down to like a list construction, and I found that in my play, I've kind of like spiraled away from what I was playing into something else that's still within my faction because of the limits of what I was doing and me just wanting to kill stuff. Like I
Yeah,
just want to
yeah.
play this. So
Well, and I
now,
mean that's where we all start. In any war game that we play, we all want to start with I'm gonna kill stuff,
Like I
and
just
and then you end up learning, well, maybe that's not the best path to victory in certain games.
yeah, I've just gotten to a point where I'm like, I just want to take their capital ships and break them. That's all I want to do. And now I've been doing that. It's a ton of fun.
Well, I've been enjoying it. I have not gotten myself to where I feel like I am skilled in any way, shape, or form, but I've definitely been learning, and I am pretty good at being self critical, which is something that I will advise to everyone. Don't take it personally, take it analytically. Take a step back and say, okay, this is what works for me, this is what's not working for me. Yes, I got blown off the table, but this is why I got blown off the table. It has nothing to do with me being stupid. It has to do with me not having all the knowledge that I needed to use the tools that I had effectively.
I'll say that when you're thinking about your games and like the game I played versus um, Damon as an example, don't ever mention dice in your post game analysis of what happened.
Yeah, I don't think
I
we talked about dice once today.
like I don't I rolled like real good sometimes, I guess. I barely pay attention to the dice rolls. I just tell my opponent a number and like accuracy brace. And then it's just out of my head gone. And when I'm thinking about games, like after the tournament, when I'm reviewing the footage, because I do like I watch tape, right? So like for sports team term, I
Yeah,
watch tape in my head of all the actions I've taken and the decisions I made because I can figure out very quickly where the fulcrum point of an engagement was, and I can watch that tape and be like, okay, well, if I ever play this again, I'm going to try this thing instead because I think that'll work better. And that's what you want to be doing, is you want to be looking at the actual meaningful decisions you made in the game, not what the dice said. Because the dice only say anything, win or lose, if you're in the position to allow them to do that to you
yeah.
through fleet construction and flying.
Well, with that, I think it is about time to say good evening. Do have a couple things I want to touch base on as far as coming events with the channel, but I will touch on that on my own. I do want to say good night and thank you to Reuben for being my guest. I didn't even mention the fact that you came in second in the event.
Yeah, I took Garrett in their last round, and he had me by the collar, and I was just keeping him down. So I got the sixth out of it, and that was about all that happened. And
Yeah, yeah,
Porter,
double brick fleets up against each other worked out a
it
lot
was
differently than it did on the Thursday night game that we streamed, but it was still ended up in your favor.
And I reviewed the footage for that one, and I think it's because of one extra click I took turn one. Is that my alignment was just enough off because of that one play that the alignment of my fleet to his, and I didn't swap a nav on the Starhawk to an engineering on my turn two, and that made it a six instead of me getting a seven or an eight.
Gotcha.
Two
Well,
points.
I will say good night to you, and I will see you on Thursday.
All right.
All right, take care. So with that, I am gonna close out the show, but I do want to remind you guys that we are going to be doing Tuesday night X-wing tomorrow night. I should probably be on the stream. I'm trying a bomber build on my X-wing stuff. Also, we will have Thursday night Armada. So I don't know if I'm going to be the one flying on that. Probably not, because I'm going to be rushing to get from work to where I can set up for the stream. But you're going to have video on that. Also wanted to mention, from a technical standpoint, I'm always trying to improve the streams that I do. I am not terribly satisfied with the dice cam situation. I recognize that there are some imperfections in that. I am trying to get that improved. Of course, we're in Christmas time, so trying to get the equipment that I need to make that look right. Do you? I may ask this on the Facebook page so that folks can respond to me and let me know what they think. Do you prefer a green screen dice cam to where you're seeing the dice overlaid on top of the footage like we do with the X-Wing stuff, in which case I need to get another tray so that the blue dice don't fade into everything? Or do you like having the dice cam on the side like I've had it, but try to figure out a way to make it a bit bigger so that you can see what's going on, and definitely make sure that I have a camera that covers the entire dice tray? These are things that I need to look at and I'm hoping to improve on. But do not hesitate to let me know on the Facebook page if you've got some advice or some things that you think I should do. Also, let me know. You can email me, the 13th Fleet at digitaledengames.com, and I will be happy to take your comments there. Probably start taking questions from the Facebook page as well. So join that Facebook page. Let me know what's going on. Everything that I do here on Twitch is replayed on YouTube, so you can check out some older shows, check out some older streams of games. And okay, green screen would be good. I will definitely look into that. I think I can definitely make that happen. It's just a matter of getting the camera the right size to cover the tray, and I need to get a new green tray. I've got the blue tray because of the Star Wars X-Wing stuff, so we'll get it figured out. Again, thank you guys for watching the show. Subscribe, like it, join the Facebook page, join the subscribe on YouTube, and subscribe here. And thank you for your support. Thank you for watching the show. You guys have a good night.